What are y'all doing? Hey, where are y'all taking me? What are y'all doing? Get away from me. Get away. Hi. I'm going to tell y'all a story. The story's about me. My name doesn't matter. Really doesn't have anything to do with the story. Some call me the Maniac. Some call me the Maniac of Gadara. But really, it's worse than that. It's way worse than that. So I'm going to share you a little bit about that story, about my story. You see, I wasn't crazy. I wasn't a maniac. It was way worse than being crazy. Let me start at the beginning. I was raised in a poor house in the region of Gadarenes, or if you're Jewish, you may have said the Gerasenes. I moved around a bit from town to town, and eventually I came up to a town or a village called Gadara. My people were a strange group of people. They had a strange religion. They were pagan for the most part, but they're kind of a weird adapted own religion. And I, for whatever reason, became their scapegoat, as they say. Maybe because I was poor, maybe because I wasn't from there, or maybe for another reason. I'll never know why. But they chose me. Some may think it was a bad thing, but in a strange way, I was given a place of honor. As a community scapegoat, you see, I was chosen to bear the demons of everyone in my community. Our spiritual leader, he followed the black magic of demonic religion, of paganism, and he had the ability to take lesser demons with the power of a greater demon and transfer them into other people, so that their demons will never really banish. They were just transferred into someone else. Every community had one or two that they would call their scapegoat. It made them feel better about their horrible way of life. Let them continue to worship their pagan gods and continue to put on the pagan demonic activity in their life. But in my case, the demons of my village were all put on me. Well, I and another man that hung out with me. We became the representative demoniacs. We bore the pain, the agony of the entire community. We literally became the Gadarene demoniacs. There were a lot of demons in our village, thousands of them. I guess that's why there was two of us. But honestly, I do not remember much about my life. I was angry all the time. I yelled at people. I cursed at them. And I must have caused a lot of problems in and around town, because the village leaders tried to restrain me. And at first they used ropes, and eventually they used chains. But because of the demons that were in me, I was able to break out of every method of restraint. Eventually they built a small shack, little one-room place for he and I to kind of live in outside the town a ways. They built it in the middle of a piece of land that they buried their dead in, around the tombs. And I ran around all the time naked, apparently. That must have been a real shocker for some of the ladies there in town. Over and over again, I tried cutting myself or stoning myself, really trying to take my own life, but it just would never work. But what do they expect? They put demons in us. They made us who we are, demoniacs. But here we were, used by our community for their own good, but also an outcast because of it. Doomed to live out our days acting, well, like maniacs. But we were worse than that. We were demon-possessed men. But then one day, it all changed. That's why you can see me the way I am today, dressed, sure you ladies are happy about that. In my own mind, my mind. First time in years, I get to say what I want to say. I get to speak what I want to speak and do what I want to do. And oh, I have a lot to say. You might have probably guessed that I'm a preacher now. Because that day changed my life, it also changed my eternity. One day, while the other guy and I were doing what we do, yelling at people like we always did, telling people to stay away, a man named Jesus gets on a boat, crosses the Sea of Galilee, and landed on our shore. I can't tell you how I knew his name or who he was. I just did. Immediately after he got off his boat, we ran up to him. We fell on our knees in front of him. And again, I don't even know why I was doing it, but we do, both of us. We get on our knees and we say to him, what do we have to do with you, Jesus, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us at this time? I adjure you by God, do not torment me. Again, I don't know how I knew his name or anything about this God I spoke of, but the demons were talking through me. And then Jesus began to speak like he came here knowing exactly what he was up against. Without even hesitating, he said, come out from them, you unclean spirit. What is your name? And out of me, this demon voice cried out, my name is Legion, for we are many. The voice in me kept begging Jesus not to send them out into the abyss. I didn't know what the abyss was at the time, but apparently it was somewhere where the demons didn't want to go. They were very afraid of it. These demons began to beg Jesus what would send them into the pigs. They said, please, don't send us to the abyss. Send us in those pigs that are over there. And they were grazing off the side. And you know what? He did. Jesus could have sent them all back into the villagers where they came from before coming into me. But he didn't. He sent them into the pigs. Now, it took me a while to understand why. I'll get to that in a minute. Jesus just said, go. And they came out of us. These thousands of demons that for years have possessed me and the other guy that were with me, they filled over 2,000 pigs. I don't think the demons cared where they went. They really felt like the pigs were probably just as unclean as the villagers. As long as Jesus didn't send them to the abyss, they were okay. But what these demons didn't know is that the pigs would run to the cliff and jump off the cliff and drown in the Sea of Galilee. To fall into the sea with the pigs was actually sending them to the abyss. You see, what Jesus did in us was what none of our religious pagan leaders could do. He didn't just exchange our demon for another or move my demon to someone else like a temporary exchange. No, when Jesus said go, he banished them forever and sent them packing into the abyss. What I didn't know now, that I know, what I didn't know then, I know now, is that in our pagan custom, the town at some point would come and execute me. Glad Jesus came. So that what they would do is they put so many demons in their maniac of Gadara, their demonic person, the demoniac that they had, they would put so many demons that at some point they would execute that person and the demons would go away for a while. And as they worshiped their pagan gods, eventually the demons would work their way back into the village and the villagers would cast them out again into someone new that they would pick to be the new demoniac. And this gives me a hint of why Jesus sent them into the pigs. But again, I'll get back to that in a second. But that is the end of my story. You see, when the herdsmen of the pigs saw what happened, they rushed into town and began telling everybody, and not just into town, they began going all over the countryside, telling anybody that would listen. Well, this caused quite a stir, you can imagine. And they all began to rush down to the shore. They wanted to see what was going on. And they came and saw Jesus, and then they saw me sitting at the feet of Jesus, as you see me today, clothed in my right mind. Pretty exciting, wasn't it? I was pretty excited. Now, at this point, I lost track of my companion. He ran off somewhere. Probably he ran off to go see his family. I didn't have any family in town, but he probably ran back to see his family because I never see him again. But this is where the problem really started. When they saw me, they did the complete opposite of what they thought they would do. I thought they'd be happy about it. I thought they'd be excited about that I was now in my right mind, clothed and calm and able to talk to. But you see, their whole plan to keep peace in the village was based on me being there to take the demons from them. Now what do? They thought the demons would just come back and they had no one to put them in yet. Well, who's going to take my place? One of them. They weren't very happy about what was going on. But I was no longer the demoniac anymore. Like so many had gone before me, Joseph and Job and Moses and others. I was restored and elevated to a place of true honor. I was taken from destruction to restoration. I was taken from death to life. I was taken from maniac to miraculous. I was taken from filled with demons, being filled with joy and compassion. It's very interesting to me that they begged Jesus to leave. Jesus just annihilated the social order of the people. The entire village functioned by placing their demons on me. If no longer could they function this way anymore, in their mind, it was their way of establishing a weird order. I was, in a way, the glue that kept the community together. And now I was no longer able to do my job. You see, my village could not function without me to blame and bear the demons of everybody else. This is actually also part of the reason why Jesus cast the demons into the pigs and not the villagers. You see, in a weird way, we see the same scenario play out in homes all over the world for thousands of years. Every family assumes a role. Every family member has a role to fill. In a healthy family, we assume healthy roles. But in a dysfunctional family, like my village, we assume unhealthy roles. And these types of families, someone always plays the scapegoat. Somebody always bears the blame for the rest of the family. We see this in abusive families and alcoholic families and drug addicted families, etc. And when the scapegoat is no longer present, or even if the family member that's causing the problems is no longer there or gets help, the function of the family literally falls apart. No one knows what their roles are anymore. And the adults just continue to roam around without an order. They become comfortable and accustomed to the dysfunction and find they cannot function without the dysfunction. Much like that, the community that I was in did not welcome what Jesus had done for me. I know I was hated and regarded as a dangerous person, an undesirable person to be around, but the reality is my village felt like they could not function without me. In a strange way, I was a source of peace and tranquility, although only a temporary solution and a dysfunctional one at that. This is what's happening to my people, my community. They saw Jesus as a threat. Much like the dysfunctional family that sees Jesus, they'll see Jesus as a threat often. And they ask him to leave. Yeah, when I thought they would be happy, they weren't. And they looked at Jesus and said, "Get out of here. Get away from our country. Leave." You know what the weird thing is? He left. Like he just walked away and got in his boat. Now, I ran up to the boat before he could kind of get ashore, and I was like, "Please, let me go with you. Let me stay with you." And you know what he said to me? He said, "Go home to your friends and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he has had compassion on you. And this is when it hit me. This is why Jesus did not send the demons into the villagers. This is their answer and their cure for the dysfunction of paganism. This is how their village will find peace. They will hear and believe in Jesus. He's the answer. And he left me there to tell them about it. One minute I'm possessed with hundreds, if not thousands of demons, and the next I'm a preacher of the gospel of God's grace, the gospel of his compassion. So I left the shoreline, ran to my country's capital, the center of all the 10 cities of my country. It began to proclaim the great things that Jesus had done for me. And everyone I told was amazed. Jesus said that if he had cast those demons out of me back into the villagers of my country, no one would ever be able to hear my story and believe in Jesus. He showed them grace. They didn't deserve it. That's what grace means. I didn't deserve it, but he showed me grace. And I know then, as much as I know now, that I need to share my story with everyone that will listen. And that's why I'm here today. I want to tell you that Jesus loves you as much as he loves me, and he wants to give his grace to you as much as he gave to me. You might be in a situation where you feel constrained, suffering, oppressed. But I'll tell you this truth. If you'll fall down at the feet of Jesus and cry out to him like I did, even if you don't know who he is, even if you don't know all about him, like me back then, I had no idea. But he revealed himself to me, and he will reveal himself to you and break you free of the bondage that you are under. This bondage may be some type of addiction. But more often than not, as I find people, they're in a bondage of a false reality of their role that they play in society. They're in bondage to a false reality of the role they played in their family. And often it's the childlike struggle and trauma that you grew up with in a dysfunctional family that you take into being an adult, and you still live in that dysfunction in your mind, even though there's no dysfunction anymore around you. It's still bondage. You see, Jesus came to free you of that bondage. But I didn't know then that I know now is that soon after that day, Jesus would go further than casting out demons from me. He would be found guilty before a trial. In fact, 3 different trials. Trials that are man-made. Evidence was brought before him that was made up, and he was declared guilty. He fulfilled the role of the scapegoat. Not just for me, but for the whole world, and you as well. He did this so the whole world, the world he created, would truly find peace and comfort for all eternity. And through the resurrection, God vindicated the innocence of Jesus to bring you life. And in doing this, like he did in my community, he began to destroy the social order of the world. Look, we live in a dysfunctional world, but Jesus took the sins of the world to the cross and he died for them. And then he rose again to offer us life in him, to take us out of this dysfunctional world and place us into his world, which is a world of peace and comfort and compassion. And that is a story that I will continue to tell until I die. The story of Jesus and how he freed me from not the ropes and the string and the cloths and the chains, but he freed me from the demons that were inside of me and set me free to tell you about him. We all stand this morning as I pray for you, and someone's going to come up and lead you in worship through song. God, we thank you for the people that are here. We thank you for their